Hello, dear viewers, and all kinds of students, and those who are listening to me. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to welcome you again to my another virtual lecture presentation. And this lecture has completely been made for honors fourth year students of national universities. And the topic of today's lecture is Poem in October by Dylan Thomas, which is already included in 20th century literature of honors fourth year. So, dear students, hope you are all hale and hearty by the benevolence of Almighty Allah, and you are doing your own works, studying, and of course, giving more times for your own achievement in success. Anyway, I'm going to start today's session. This topic is not a very, complicated one. Rather, it's a very simple topic of your syllabus. Only one poem of Dylan Thomas included in that. And I'm going to talk about this poem. At least I would like to try to brief the most important aspects of the poem from the beginning to the end. Yes, so I'm going to start. Okay. So let's talk about Dylan Thomas first, his autobiography and the background of the poem. Okay, he's often called a Welsh poet, that is, born in Wales, UK, a very prolific writer of his own time. Full name, Dylan Marlis Thomas, born October 27, 1914, Swansea, Glamorgan, now which is called actually Swansea, small village of Lan. The pronunciation of that village is Lan. The spelling is Laugharne. It's not a very famous village of that vicinity, and died November 9, 1953, New York, United States. Welsh poet, basically he was often called, and prose writer whose work is known for its comic exuberance, rhapsodic lilt, and pathos. His personal life, punctuated by reckless bouts of heavy drinking, and of course, often called notorious in his lifestyle. This is a simple lifestyle of, I have given you a very little idea of his biography or life sketch of Dylan Thomas. And now let us try to know a little bit about his personal life. Thomas actually spent his childhood in southwestern Wales. His father taught English at the Swansea Grammar School, which in due course the boy attended afterwards. Because Dylan's mother was a farmer's daughter, he had a country home he could go to when on holiday, which is the very important part of his subject matter of all his poems, going back to farmland and enjoying the summer and autumn there. His other very famous poem, Fern Hill, which was included in the first year syllabus, is even more noteworthy for his childhood memories and reminiscences. That poem was published in 1946. Okay. His father was a school teacher in a local grammar school, and afterwards he became the student of that school. He edited the school magazine, contributing poetry and prose simultaneously. Thomas did badly at school since he was always intellectually lazy with regard to any subject that didn't directly concern him. His practical knowledge of English poetry was enormous. However, he had begun writing poetry at a very early age. Some people would like to call him that he started writing poetry at the age of 6. Yes, that was his early genius, and he wrote many poems, many books of poems, anthologies. First book is called 18 Poems, appeared 1934, and it was a striking success for all the individuals and even for him. And later on, he kept going on writing, and his original style was further developed by 25 Poems, another anthology, The Map of Love, These are his very famous, popular, and prolific anthologies written by Dylan. And if you look at his poems, there is a kind of a touch of childhood memories, reminisce his boisterous lifestyle, and his nostalgic past is very much evident. Even in this poem, the poem that I'm going to talk about today, poem in October, that was the evidence of his past reminiscent life, which he has left behind like a trail. And that was a very famous poem from that all perspective. Okay, let's go deeper into the poem now. I'm going to talk about the title of the poem. This poem actually, poem in October, he actually meant the month of his birth, the day he was celebrating his birthday. It's very famous and a very memorable day of his life. And now let us talk about the stanzaic division, the mechanical versification of the poem. Poem in October by Dylan or Dylan Thomas is a 7 stanza poem that is separated into sets of 10 lines. That is, each and after 10 lines there is a slight division. And it was his custom. Thomas chose not to use one particular rhyme scheme. That is why we saw the variations of rhymes. But there are a few moments in which end sounds are unified in most of the verses through the use of half rhyme. There's a constant rhyme in stanza 3 with the words rolling, whistling, a little bit like tercet. The same kind of rhyme occurs in stanza 5 with the end words like summer, mother. These words depend on their constants to rhyme. There are also moments of assonance. He has used a lot of figures of speech like assonance. What is assonance? The similarity of the vowel sounds, the repetition of the vowel sounds is called assonance, and the repetition of the consonant sounds is called alliteration. So there are a lot of assonance rhyme schemes, depends on the vowel sounds he used off and on. One such example is the words heron, beacon. There is not such rhyme scheme in this verse, in these syllables. So the poem's stanzas are not unified, as I've already mentioned, by a rhyme or rhyme scheme. The lines are undeniably cinnabar in length and variation and indentation. This is a feature that clearly stands out when one observes the lines on the page. There are 3 longer lines, then 2 very short ones, irregular versifications. These are followed by 2 or more long lines again. 2 more short, 1 final long line in each and every stanza. The force actually, they give us more stress to the reader's eyes to move back and forth over the page, perhaps mimicking the rise and fall of waves. He actually wanted to imitate the rise and fall of the natural surroundings that he used to enjoy at his own village, Lan. And the rise and fall of waves, the ringing of rain, and the climbing up of hill, all very rhythmic and lilting in his poems. Okay, dear students, let's go to the summary of the poem. I will, if time allows me, I will try to recite a few lines from the poem. So what's the summary of the poem? Very important, the starting part of this summary, because the poet celebrates his 30th birthday and realizes with a sense of grief that he has crossed another milestone on the road to death. That is, he has already crossed 30. But a moment later, his mind is filled with a kind of joy when, looking around in the pleasant morning, he finds that the whole world belongs to him. He feels happy that he is greeted by many objects and creatures of nature. The poet gives some examples of natural objects and creatures, such as priest-like herons sitting in the shore, fish in the pool of water, and water birds. October, the autumn month in which Thomas was born, is often rainy, which we get the indication in his poem. That is very much symbolic. The whole world is actually crying, weeping for the loss of something. And climbing up the hill, the poet looks up and finds that he's confused as to seasons and climates. It is both spring-like and summery. Summery means Summery, like summer, and it's the adjective of summer. It was possible for the poet to spend his whole birthday in the world of wonder and delight, but the weather changed. The change of weather here implies the change in the mental climate of the poet. The poet's mind turns from his present surroundings to something else, namely his days of childhood. The poet remembers the happy and glorious days of his childhood, which he passed in Fernhill. We get the reference of Fernhill, another very famous poem written by Dylan, where the farm of his aunt was situated. It was a country noted for apples and pears. The boy Dylan walked like a lord there. He's very sad, melancholic, that his childhood days are gone by forever, and those days will never come back to him anymore. Tears roll down his cheeks, and those were the glorious days of his lives, and all were thought in flashbacks. Thus, the poet, even in his 30th age, identifies himself with his childhood. His innocent childish mind hasn't yet changed. Thus, this poem in October, is an attempt to recapture the sweet memories of childhood through the poet seeks an escape, a refuge from the harsh realities of life, at least for the moment. A little bit of escapism like and Hellenism like John Keats. He would like to go back. He would like to uh, get and set himself free from all kinds of anxieties, pangs and agonies from the world. That's it. That is the real theme and message of the poem. Okay, let's talk about the theme and tone of the poem. Poem in October by Dylan Thomas is a poem written on the occasion of the speaker's 30th birthday. And it was an interesting poem because it is about autumn, especially nature in that season. Often focuses on the transition from summer to fall. Fall means autumn in America and England. In Thomas's poems, the tone is calm normally and pleasant as the speaker observes and describes the beauty of natural world he observes on the morning of his birthday. About halfway through the poem, the speaker reflects on birthday memories from his childhood, and the tone becomes quite joyful and mesmerizing. The poet even includes imagery explicitly related to summertime to describe his mood on his birthday. It seems like a possible theme could be that birthday gives us a chance to reflect on our place in the world around us and to recall with gratitude the milestone of our lives. Okay, so I would like to talk about the theme now. This part of the poem analysis focuses three themes actually: the primacy of sound, childhood as a time of innocence, and alienation in adulthood. Right from the first stanza, hearing is privileged over sight and the other senses by Thomas. It's the sounds of the seas. We get a lot of actually audible imageries, which we can hear through our ears. Audible imageries, sounds of the seas, and of course not the sight of Swansea that draws him out of his sleep and takes him outside into the lap of nature. It is the whistling of the blackbirds that fascinate him when he is on the hillside. In fact, the blackbirds are actually invisible to him since they are all huddling together in the bushes that line the road he is taking up to the hill. About childhood, he remembers it as a time characterized by the hearing of various tales and legends. As a child, he had desperately wanted nature to hear of his joy. So this is the simple theme of the poem. I would like to give you some light of the background of the poem. Dylan Thomas' poem in October is derived from the volume Death and Entrance, where he presents a vision of his childhood in contradiction to the monotonous, frustrated urban life after world wars. The poem describes comparing and contrasting picture of village's life and town life, which shows us the backward and forward movement of life. The title "Poem in October" is an apt and suggestive one. Reveals the theme of the poem. Poet has presented his sweet past memories of the village where he passed his childhood. Indirectly, the poet compared his present city full of frustration, weariness, boredom, and peaceful with the peaceful village life. The poem is a symbol of his thoughts and feelings towards his present life, and which is quite opposite to the picture of his small town, Lan. The poet becomes emotional and tries to be in those days of his village in October. And that is why the name of the October, the poem's name, Poem in October, is very much successful. Now let us have a look at the symbols that the poet has tremendously used. He is a modern poet, so all modern poets, this is a salient characteristic of all modern poets to use symbols, to play with the symbols, and he is no exception. So what are the symbols? Life. Life is a symbol of journey to heaven. Surrealistic images of nature he has used in the poem. It is a symbol of God's glory, which is also evident in Wordsworth's poem. We found the glory of God, the pantheistic philosophy of God, which is also available in Wordsworth's poem. Childhood. It's a symbol of innocence, moral and spiritual lesson. Church. Church is a symbol of religion, and there are a lot of biblical allusions are also prevailing in the poem. Adulthood. Adulthood is a symbol of disorder, decay, and confusion. Past and present is mingled in the like a kind of he has tried to use complex traits of modern poetry, which is used by T.S. Eliot in his poems. Stream of consciousness technique he has used a little bit at the end of the poem. So there are some religious elements also interspersed throughout the whole poem, like life and birth, life and birth and death. And he has used some philosophies like every object of nature declares the glory of God, which is called actually pantheism and pantheistic philosophy. Reference of church and prayer, remembrance of motherly love, infancy refers to parables, that is Jesus Christ's advice to his apostles, which are all very much loaded in this poem. So the last thing, the message of the poem. Dylan Thomas' poem in October celebrates the unity of man and nature, of past and present, life and death, all mingled together. And he said in one of his statements, "It's my aim as an artist to bring a certain wonder into myself, to prove beyond doubt to myself that the flesh that covers me and the flesh that covers the sun, that the blood in my lungs is the blood that goes up and down in a tree." So these are his own reminiscences of his poem and statement. So dear students, now let us have a short look of the text of the poem, which I would like to recite the few lines from the poem, maybe the first stanza of the poem. I would like to share the first stanza of the poem. A few stanzas of the poem actually. This poem is a long poem. It's not possible to read the whole poem. I'm going to read some chunks, a little chunk from the poem. The day winding down now at God speeded summer's end. In the torrent salmon sun, in my sea-shaken house, on a breakneck of rocks, tangled with syrup and fruit, froth, flute, fin, and quill. At a wood's dancing hoof, by succumbed, starfilled sands. So these are the images he has desperately used, intertwined through the whole poem. And in another, poem, in another area of the poem, he has, even if you look at the beginning of the poem, he has referred to his birthday, that he has stepped into 30, that I am now 30th, and it means that 30 years have already gone past, and he is not sure whether he will be able to live for more another 30 years or not. So he is in a very dejected mode, because he knows that the more the days gone by, the more he is going to the call of the grave, call of the death. That was his ultimate actually desire in the poem. It's a very pessimistic tone used by the poet in this poem. So that's it in my short lecture presentation. I have tried to give you a very some important ideas used Dylan in his whole poem. Hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and I would strongly suggest you to read the text of the poem and try to understand, and then go to the broad questions and short and brief questions of your syllabus. So thank you very much, and it's all from me today, and thanks for being with me. Have a nice